Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our 7th What Matters to Me and Why discussion. I'm so happy that so many of you are here. And I'm John Stupar. I teach in the School of Engineering. And some of you I know me as the president of the UCI Campus Interfaith Center. And I'm also on the committee for What Matters to Me and Why. And so I had the opportunity to do the introduction today. And to also bring to your attention that today is our last discussion of this school year, the 2012-13 school year. And we're not going to have another event until October, which will be the kickoff of our 2013-14 school year. And at that time, we're going to have one of the country's most influential attorneys, who happens to be our very own founding dean of the law school, Professor Erwin Chemerinsky. So that'll be in October. And some minor housekeeping reminders to just make sure you clean up your little box and food and things afterward. And for those of you who don't know what Matters to Me and Why is all about, it's basically a series of informal discussions with respected members of our faculty and staff that is supposed to encourage reflection about our values and our beliefs and motivations in the lives of those who shape our university. And with the speakers, we will kind of explore their personal journeys in life, choices they've made, difficulties that they've encountered, and commitments that they grasp, and joys revealed. All with the hope that these stories will strengthen our bonds and fortify the virtues and values that we all share here at UCI. And that's what the whole purpose of this is. Now, our speaker will be introduced today by the student body president, Tracy Ishigo. But before you come up to introduce, I would like to remind you that we all have these little feedback forms that I would like to ask you to fill out afterwards to turn in. And one of the recommendations somebody made last time was that they said, we would like to get to know the people who come to this event. And so they said, could we have at least 1 minute in the beginning where people could meet and greet the people around you. Now, we don't have a whole lot of time. I'll give you 1 minute to do that. And then while you're doing that, Tracy will come up. And after that, she will introduce our speaker. So just meet and greet the people around you. Shake your hands. Say hello.
I'm going to start the introduction of Dr. Castellanos, but that's a new idea that we had that people can kind of meet and greet beforehand. On one of our previous comment cards, it said something like, I really wish that students and faculty and staff could speak more with each other, so we hope that created that kind of space for us to do that. But all right, I haven't done too many introductions, and I really want to make this one do it justice. But before, when we were looking to select different speakers for the What Matters to Me and Why series, I was going around and asking students, hey, what professors or what people around UCI have really impacted you or have you heard amazing things about? And Dr. Castellanos' name is the one that came up a lot. I actually have 2 personal friends who she's been mentors to, and they're on their ways to get PhDs now. And even in our own conversations together, when I was, trying to get to know her and see, what am I going to say up here about her, it kind of transitioned into this conversation that was like, what are you doing with your life? How are you doing? What's next for you? And this is what you're going to do. So I really think that as a lecturer and as the director of the Social Sciences Academic Resource Center that has helped so many of our students here, she's really proven herself to be an empowering and mindful and someone who is really committed to mentorship. And I think that's really important. Some of the things that she said that she thinks about is, what are you doing for other people? And don't forget that you are helped. And I think that's really important, coming full circle about what is your responsibility on this world. So I think that without further ado, I'll just introduce Dr. Castellanos and thank her for all the amazing work that she's done here at UCI already.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. Let me put this on. Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here this afternoon. As I began to prepare today, I will admit before if indeed I do become emotional, that I am a little bit of a psychology, education type of person. So that means that I really feel my things. And so when I share my stories, I tend to either A, become very excited and you can see it and you're like, wow, she's definitely Cuban. Or B, I become a little bit emotional. And so I took a little bit of time to think about what I wanted to share. And before I begin to start my talk, I really want to say that for me to be here is certainly an amazing opportunity. As I saw the people who were presenting before me, I thought, wow, you know, I am honored and I am blessed to be part of this team and part of this group and to have the opportunity to speak to UC Irvine. So as I start here, so I want to thank the committee, I want to thank Chancellor Drake, I want to thank Tracy, I want to thank the students and faculty and my colleagues. So I do have a small poem. The poem was rather long, and I just did a short little version of it, so you can kind of get an idea. So it starts like this. It says, I am woman, I am man, I am you, I am me, I am family, I am ocean, I am sky, I am mountain, I am the fabric of you and me, today, tomorrow, and after I die. I am spiritual, I am divine, I am the past, I am the present, I am tomorrow. I live, I love, I die. I live, I love, I die. I breathe to live, and I live to breathe. We die. Look within, study you, study me. Study what makes the universe be. Consciousness and connection are primary to understanding living. Be one, be all. Your progress is mine, and mine is yours. Be one, be all. Help me, I will help you. Helping you helps me. Together we ground and form roots like a tree. All right. That was the spirit that inspired it. So the values of the university evolve around respect, intellectual curiosity, integrity, commitment, empathy, appreciation, and fun. And I really feel that a lot of those values embody who I am. I oftentimes I'm told that I'm funny and I'm engaging and all of that is great. But certain values that I also want to talk about that I also really push forward include things like diversity, family, community, advocacy, and justice. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my background. I want to tell you a little bit about who I am, how I got here, and then I may fill in the blanks and I may not, and then you guys can maybe ask me some questions if you're interested. This is a picture that I created. So as you see, I tend to be pretty creative, right? I like to write, I like to, and while I have all sorts of publications and those are very different than what I just read to you, there's another side of me. And there's something that to me, there's something about balance. There's something about being able to say, yes, I can think in a box, or I can think outside the box, and yes, I could be very logical, but then at the same time, I can be very organic. And so that's that piece. So I created this collage, actually, some time ago. I was taking a shaman class, as a matter of fact. And somebody said, you gotta write or do something for us and tell us who you are. And I thought, you know, I write so much at school, I don't feel like writing today. So I give pictures, okay? And so instead of writing, and I thought, you know, the brain is better able to remember things by pictures versus all these words. So let me just give them pictures. And I did. And so I wanted to share this with you today It's actually not as traditional for us to have pictures up, and I want to thank the committee for doing that. And I'll start actually just with the left corner all the way through. You guys can kind of look at that. And they represent, you know, my ethnic background. It represents my education, the fact that I'm a feminist, the fact that I'm all about justice and equality. I did study at Washington State University, Pullman. And so this amazing landscape, for those of you who know the area. And we have the lovely Palouse, I have to say. And if any of you have the time to go there, please visit. And that's what it looks like. People say, is that painted? Is that drawn? No, no, that's exactly what it looks like. I had the pleasure of going back, I don't want to say home, but back to Wazoo this weekend. And as we were flying down and I looked down, I said, this is good, you know. These are one of the moments that will stay with me. And so you see here, we have the Inca ruins, we have nature. This is a healing woman. And we'll talk about healing today. About, you know, I started really early. So I finished my degree very young. I finished at 25, okay? And I had my doctorate, and I felt like, oh, I'm going to conquer the world. And that was great. And 15 years or 10 years later, the balance kind of fell out of place. And so we'll talk about that too, and why healing for me is so important. So obviously I'm Cuban American, but as I'm Cuban American, I grew up in Southeast LA. So I'm not the typical Cuban American, right? You think of somebody from Cuba or Cuban American, you think Miami, you think somebody perhaps who has all sorts of different experiences within their community. I myself had a very different experience where I was able to interact with a lot of ethnicities and a lot of races. So, but my family is a refugee family. My dad has a great story. He came to the United States in 1969, and he didn't know how to swim, okay? And he was really afraid of water. My dad was actually claustrophobic, and he says, but I really wanted to come to America. And so one night, they ended up, his friend says, you know, we're gonna leave, we're all gonna go. We're gonna go in a little boat, a tugboat. This is 1960. So he was really what we call one of the first boat people, right, from Cuba, what we call los balseros. And so he says that he was ready, and it was like 9 o'clock, and everybody's like, okay, it has to be really dark, nobody sees you. So he says that he got to the water, and he says to his friends, right, bring the boat over. And then his friend says, nah, we can't bring the boat over, it has to be in the middle of the ocean. You gotta swim, Agustin. And he rested in peace. And then he says, oh, well, I don't know how to swim. And then they said, well, why didn't you tell us this? And then he said, well, because if I would have said that, you would have let me come. So he ends up telling the story that his friends say, well, you gotta take off your clothes. He takes off his clothes, and he puts it in a little bundle underneath his arm. And he says he jumps all the way to his boat, or this little boat. He says, by the time I got there, I couldn't breathe, I was suffocating. He said, I left all my clothes behind. So I literally came to America with nothing on my back. Okay. So we thank, you know, the fact that his friends were able to give him a shirt, and then they were actually picked up by the Coast Guard in that time, and they were able to say, we're refugees, we're in the middle of this ocean, we don't want to go back, because Fidel will do something to us, so can you please be brought in? And they did. My dad says that was one of his best memories. They brought him into the States and stuff like that. So our story is a different type of story, especially from the story that we hear today, right? Let's close the borders, let's not have this happen. And it's very different also for all Cubanos today as well. My mom had a different background. My mom, I think, had a much more elite background. She tells me stories about being a part of Catholic schooling, which I'm also a product of. And she says that the nuns would sit up on top of a balcony and watch her eat. I'm like, I could only imagine. I mean, I had a really good experience with the nuns for 12 years. At the same time, I can't imagine having these nuns sitting above me. And she says that she had awful stories. You know, I mean, I love the nuns, don't take me wrong. But awful stories would come down and hit her, and you know. And so she would talk about how she was in boarding school basically in Cuba, and she talked about how she wanted to see her family. And so family is a big thing for us because she felt she was separated from her family as she was growing up. She never really got to see her parents, even though they were in the island. Because her parents sent her out because we are, here you go, this picture here, we are Guajiros, okay? I don't know if you all have heard that song. It's Soy Guajiro. And Soy Guajiro is basically somebody who comes from a small, like a community, a town. And these are individuals who are farmers, right? So my grandfather, he rest in peace, he wasn't somebody who spoke a whole lot. He would listen, he would look, he wouldn't talk a whole lot. So we have all these stories. Eventually my mom and my dad came to America, and my mom tells me these stories about how she came to America when she was 15, and she never got to see her mom until she was 30. And so for her, she says, I tell her the story of Ilian, right? Ilian Gonzalez, the little boy who they found in the middle of the ocean. And when he came to America and they found him with the dolphins, I personally went out and I got my Cuban flag and I was waving it, and I said, keep him here, justice, right? And my mom says, I don't know how I'd feel about that. She says, because the fact is that I was separated from my mom 15 years and it was awful. It was not something that I chose. And she's like, I don't know if I'd choose that for you. I said, well, I think I said, well, I can't say anything, Mom. I'm not a mom, I'll honor your decision. So ultimately, it's family, connection, love, and unity that I learned from my parents. So although, they had great love between the two, I eventually grew up in a single parent household because my mom and my dad struggled to stay together. And I asked, like, why isn't love enough? Why aren't they staying despite the fact? And they basically had differences, and I was raised then, along with my parents, by my grandparents. And I don't know if any of you know what extended kinship means or acquired kin. And it means that when we are refugees, because we can't go back to the island. I mean, I have a brother in the island that I met in 1999, and that was it. I've never seen him again, because I can't go back. I mean, I wasn't supposed to be there to begin with, right? I don't know, we should record that part, but yes. But just kidding. And so the fact of the matter was that when my parents came, they ended up meeting two individuals that were friends of my my father's mother. So my paternal grandmother. And these people, a couple, had incidentally left their own children in Cuba as well. And my name was Jeanette, and my mom's name is Miriam. And they had left their daughter named Miriam and granddaughter Lizette. Okay? And so those people became my grandparents. And I never met my grandparents until I was like 10 or 12, right? But they are my grandparents today. And so my grandparents taught me the struggle of the island. They taught me, well, my primary language is Spanish, right? So they helped me to understand the life and struggles of the refugee. They did not speak the language and had stories of eating cat food mistakenly because, they didn't read. So today I'm still their cultural interpreter, right? I think that's funny. You guys can laugh. It is funny. I mean, I'm supposed to laugh, or it's not a bad thing. No, it happens, right? I'm also their language broker. So whenever I come home, can you read this for me? We have these bills, and that's part of my responsibility. And I don't see that to be anything bad. As a matter of fact, I see that to be an honor. Although one could believe that we're worlds apart, my grandparents share their wisdom with me. And they help me understand the importance of spirituality, God, and kindness. So that's a little bit about who I am and how I grew up. So upon leaving home to UCI, which by the way was not, I wish I can say, yeah, I picked UCI because like now, top in the nation, #3. Wow, we're so excited. I mean, I'm really excited about that. But the fact is that I picked UCI because my best friend came here. Thank you, Arlette, And so one of my best friends says, I'm going to UCI. Why are you going to UCI? Because it's one of the best schools. Oh, I think I'm in Long Beach State or something. She's like, why? You've been accepted to UCI. So she eventually convinced me. She filled out my FAFSA. She did that for me every year, thank you. My mother really appreciates that. So I ended up coming here to UCI, and I basically stumbled into this great, great gold mine, which I never would have imagined. And so I took a class, and I basically took this class with Dr. Horace Mitchell, for those of you who've been here for a long time. Horace Mitchell is our past Vice President of Student Affairs. And, there's this girl, Latina girl, who's like, oh, you guys are lost, aren't you? This is what she literally is. I still remember. We were freshmen. You guys are lost. What are you doing in this class? This is an upper division class. I said, well, and we just took it because it was African American psychology. It sounded interesting. And so eventually she's like, you need to go meet Joe White. You guys are so lost, you need to go meet somebody for a mentorship. So I took the risk, I guess, and I met Joe, and Joe helped me navigate my education. I thought that the BA was going to be it. I was like, okay, I want to become a psychologist or something. I didn't even know what I wanted to become. Okay, but when Joe and I began to talk, he's like, well, yeah, you should, maybe think about therapy, psychology, something. Let's explore your interests. And I was like, yeah, I was a psych major. Yeah, I'll be done with my BA and then I practice, right? Like, no, not quite. Oh, okay. Then, what's the story then? Well, how much more time? The fact that I'm here is great. And so Joe, through his relationship, I learned the value of helping others. I learned what it was to be a mentor. He got to know my mom. He knew my dad. He visited my graduation night, came to my house, and he really taught me what it was to have human contact. He still does that today. And so when we finished our journey as a, junior and senior, he helped me to build my portfolio and sent me off to get my PhD at Washington State. And he worked hard at that because he wanted me to have a full ride. I got accepted to Stanford, but that was money. So he's like, oh, Miriam is not going to like that. let's talk about another option. So, for my mom's sake, we decided on Washington State. So when I finished with Joe, I couldn't believe that was happening, right? He had helped me to create a dream that I had never even seen. And I said, well, how can I repay you? You're an amazing man. And he says, just push it forward. And his famous saying is, you were a diamond in the rough, right? And so today I continue to tell my kids that. So I took that lesson to heart. And today I'd say that my success is based on my student interactions. So I finished my degree. I came back to UC Irvine. I wasn't sure, I had all sorts of opportunities. The world was open for me. But given my values for family, I could not, as much as I tried, I could not see myself in the Midwest, okay? And that's where I would end up going, most likely. And I think that's okay now. Like, I send my kids to the Midwest to get a degree, but I say, well, that's terminal, you'll come back, Here, I was like, I don't know when the coming back will be. So, when I got my degree, I ended up doing a postdoc at Indiana University, Bloomington. And they said, if you want to stay, we'll give you a job at Indianapolis. And I was like, yeah. Called my mom, she's like, what? I said, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's going to be a possibility for me. And we were so connected, and I couldn't even imagine being without my grandparents, who at the time were old, and now are just older. Thank you, God, for them. Still here. Yeah, we're 90, 97, right? Yeah, right, exactly. And so I ended up coming back, and then I did a visiting faculty line at Wisconsin-Madison. And then even Wisconsin has been sending me, had been sending me throughout the years invitations. Like, oh, here's another opportunity. And I said, it's a flagship, right? No, I can't. And so I stayed here, and I ended up talking to Joe. And he said, well, I'm sure we'll find you something. There has to be something for you to do. So we found an opening under Manuel and Juan Lara, and Sally Peterson, who was also one of my mentors. Okay? Sally Peterson was the dean before Ramin. And so I came back. I had a part-time job. It was like just 50%. And the other 50% was at Long Beach State to teach some classes. And eventually it matched up, and I ended up having a full-time job at UCI for a year. Then I did a conference, and my boss at the time, who was Cesar Zaracetes, watched me in action. He says, I want you to work for me. And at the time also Kathy was leading, Kathy Canoe. She was going to become an president. So I ended up picking up her classes, and I ended up overseeing the academic center. And I've been in that position now, unbelievable, since 1999. Okay? And so that's the story of how I got to UCI. My journey in helping and giving back to students has been centered in with the intention of helping others, advocating, improving people's futures. And I'm personally invested in helping them understand life purpose. So I personally am a triple minority, quadruple minority, however you want to see me. I'm a woman of color. I come from an uneducated family. My father had a 5th grade degree, or a 5th grade, education degree. Yeah, it is a degree, trust me. My mother went to 10th grade, and she dropped out. Right? My grandparents, there's no education. So I come from an undereducated family. I'm a woman of color. We were low income. My mom, being a single mom, would tell me, like, not when I was a child, but later, we shared stories about how hard that was for her. So there's all sorts of dimensions to me, along with the fact that I'm a single daughter with a lot of responsibilities. Religion-wise, I was born and raised Catholic, but I'm very open to different religions and practices, as you've heard about shamanism. And I'm also bisexual, so that creates even a different dimension for people. Okay, so being a triple, quadruple minority, I gained insight from my various mentors about the value of being an advocate for the underrepresented, you see? And I was fed by every story that people came to talk to me about. And I realized that these are unheard voices. These are silenced people. And so I was determined to become the representative for those without a voice and to be the best researcher to learn how to do emic research. Emic research is very different than etic, right? Etic is you pick up a measure, you give it to somebody, and you say, tell me how you're feeling. What's your well-being? I said, well, wait a minute. This well-being scale, how many people of color did it have in it when they created it? What values are being represented? So let me go ask what, for Latinos, for African Americans, what is well-being for you? So right now we actually have a study very cool on Asian Americans, and what is well-being for them, right? So that's the difference between my studies. My studies are not just about cognitive factors, like a lot of people who look at education. They end up studying things like GPA, right? GPA or other factors. I look at psychosocial cultural, meaning psychological, social, cultural factors, and I look at the intermediate processes. So it's not the outcome for me, it's the process that I try to explain. All right, so I'll go today. So as I was trying to explain to you, so even though things were going amazingly, and I was so blessed, and God is so good to you, or to me. I wrote these books, I edited these books, and all of a sudden, by the age of, I'd say 33, 34, I became very ill. Something happened, and I just wasn't able to function. And I still came to work every day, but I was not feeling well. And people could see it in my face, people could see it in I dropped like 50 pounds. I'm like, where's she going, That's what I wondered. And I learned that you have to make a balance for yourself. So even though I was so much into doing, I forgot myself along the way. Right? And even though I studied psychology, I forgot myself along the way. And eventually I brought it together for myself and my family, and I began to learn of all sorts of practices. And so, when I'm having a moment and somebody's having a moment with me, I will ho'oponopono them, right? And that means that I look at them and their spirit, and I say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I forgive you, thank you, and I love you. Because I try to connect with that person, and I realize that, we're all human. And so I've learned a lot through that journey, and it was not an easy journey. So eventually, fast forward 8 years later, we got all under control. I think it was a thyroid issue. So all of that, we still don't know, but kind of. And now, I can really say, I can do this, but I can't do that, because this is not going to create a balance for me. So balance has become really important. This is why we have her here. She's a healer and a healed woman. And so I consider myself both. And I don't heal people. I hope that the work that I do helps to heal them. People heal themselves. That's the difference. So last, I want to express my value. How are we doing that? Okay. Last, I want to express my value for community and service. I believe I am here to help and make a difference. So I'm really an existentialist. Like, what's my life meaning, right? So daily I awake and I ask the question, what will be my good deed for the day? And I really do that. People go, you're right. I do. Who will I serve? You know, what will be my contribution? And you know, the nice thing about being here at UCI is that it really helps. You know, I am service-driven, but UC Irvine is all about service. But I take the extra step. So if I know that as a faculty I have to meet, and I want to meet, with 5 kids or students, and I'm going to advise them, then I say, well, this little one didn't give me a letter of recommendation binder on time, but I'm still going to do this gesture for them today. And we're going to meet their deadline, regardless. Right? So I'll make that extra effort that does not belong in my job description, you know, to say to myself, this is my extra deed for the day. And I ask you, what is your extra deed for the day? How will you, you know, be the one to do something to help somebody? So with my students, and I often call them my kids, and you go, don't call them your kids. Okay, my students. Because I believe in academic family. I'll end there. I believe in academic family. And I believe that academia does a great job of providing resources. But we need to have a community to help us build the minds and shape the experiences of these students. And so whenever I meet a student, I don't do this alone. I mentor them with my colleagues. I have a mentor network, I guess we can say. And I place them and I pick them, you know, go to the counseling center, go do coach, go do this, you know, whatever you need to do, right? Let's build your academic portfolio. So I'm not doing this alone. But at the end of the night, I say to them, what will be your legacy? When you retire, I say to them, at 60, and they're like, or I say at 70, like 70, Dr. C, oh no. I'm like, okay, no, 55, like, what world are you in? However, I want to engage that possibility. And I say, tell me, what will be your legacy? And in that I finish, because that's what I ask myself every day. What can I leave behind in my absence? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. C, for the inspirational talk. Now is the time for everybody to have a chance to do, we're going to do a Q&A, so we're going to pass the microphone around, and anyone can ask Dr. C a question. She could probably really help you out. Anyone want to ask a question first?
That worries me, because then I spoke too much, I gave you guys too much information. Or just kidding. Yes, please. John?
I always, for some reason, begin the questioning. I don't know why anybody else wants to go before me. I usually like to ask, what was your spiritual experience in life that kind of motivates you as to who you are and what matters?
Beautiful. Thank you for that question. So the question is, what was my spiritual motivation and journey? So I thank you for that, because I think that originally when I was growing up, I'd say I was very religious, right? And something happened along the way for me. I can't really pinpoint it. I can say that I have some very strong Catholic values, right? And, you know, my mom and my father worked very hard to send me through schooling for that. And as I began to grow older, I think here at UC Irvine, I really became exposed to a lot of different religions. And I was very confused, right? And I said, what is this? You know, and my grandfather, who I believe is my little treasure of wisdom, I went to him and I said, I don't know, what is this? And he says, you know, hija, which is daughter, there's going to be a lot of religions, he says to me. He says, and we brought you a Catholic, and we do believe in Jesus Christ. He says, however, it depends on where people are born. This is what his thought process was. And he says, so if you're born in a particular place, you're going to learn about a different God. He says, however, he says, ultimately, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all headed in the same direction, and we all want good for people. He says, so if you can keep that principle in your life, I think you're going to be okay. So he was the one who brought that for me. And when I began to study different religions, and being a Cuban American, by the way, I had a lot of exposure to different things, you know. So if you look at my writing, I have stuff on Santeria, I have stuff on curanderismo. These are all various different, you know, belief systems that people partake in, right? And at one point, I was even a practitioner of Santeria. People look at Santeria and say, oh my gosh, Santeria is all voodoo, and it's really bad. And that's not true either. Okay, I don't practice Santeria anymore. But when you grow up with it, my mother actually never taught me that, but we had exposure around the community. So, you know, since that time, I haven't really practiced it, but I had exposure, and I learned about it. And there's other religions that I eventually got into. Things like, you know, what was Santeria, different practices, I should say, Santeria, although that is called the religion for them. And then Buddhism. So this morning as I was driving in, I was praying to Jesus Christ, and then I was doing my mantra, 108 mantras. You know, but let's go, boom, nah, blah, blah, you know, and people were like, what is she doing? Well, I'm praying and I'm doing my mantra at the same time. Praying to Jesus Christ is doing my mantra at the same time. So there is this notion of openness for me, and somebody who looks at that might say that is not possible, you know, you will not go to heaven, or whatever. And that's not for either of us to really determine. That at the end of the night, it's about people coming together and being, and it sounds weird, but being in love. Not in love, but in love. Right? And that's the piece for me. So I hope that kind of answers the question. Thank you. Yes?
I have another question over here. You mentioned you were a first-generation student, and you came here to UC Irvine, and you're a woman of color, and all the other identities you talked about. But I wanted to, as a woman of color here at UC Irvine, I wanted to ask you, like, have you seen change happen from the time you were here to now? And also, I know it's two questions, but what would be like your best advice to motivate a student to go like to graduate school or to PhD?
Go all the way. Okay, so let me start off with the first question. So as a woman of color, which that is my most salient identity, and people say, what is your most salient? My most salient identity is being a Latina woman, right, female. And I would say that I remember, this is one of the break points. I remember in 1998 being in grad school and organizing a Latina conference called ELLA, Educated Latinas Leading America. And I remember somebody just running into the room and saying, we just got the stats, and for the first time, Latinas surpassed, you know, our Latino boys. And today it's a devastation, but at the time, we were very low in our numbers. So, and we surpassed Latino boys in attaining PhDs. Now, it's 51-49. Okay, and so for us, that was a huge deal because we had broken into academia in a different way. And there's not very many of us. First name is Jen. Jen, kept it with J. And, you know, I think that it was lonely. It was isolating. It was marginalizing, right? When I went to Washington State this weekend and I watched everybody walk, I did the multicultural graduation, 500 parents, I cried. Because there was 126 minorities coming together to read. And to me, although here, that is something I see every day. I mean, I walk, I make all these kids walk. We have the walk for social sciences, and there's 2,000 undergrads, and you know, a large portion of them are people of color, racial ethnic minorities. But that's really not the case in every place. And so, answering your question, it's been quite a journey. It hasn't been easy, but there has been progress, right? And you do see changes. You begin to see, you know, the representation of women of color in academia. You begin to see the representation of more Latinas in higher places. And so, you know, although people might say, well, why is race and ethnicity and culture such an important piece? Well, it's part about feeling that you're part of a community as well, right? And so I'd say that that has improved. There still needs to be more improvement. You know, when I think of a couple of my colleagues, like Kika Friend, I say to her, you know, you can't go, you can't retire. I tell her this all the time. She won't for a while, but I always think of that. Because when I first got here, we had Manuel, we had Juan Lara, we had all these Latino individuals. They were males though, but they were there. And then, you know, now we have, thank God, also Thomas Farhan, who's a mentor of mine as well. But, you know, and I told Kika, you'll be the next, with her and Stephanie, one of the highest Latinas ranked in the entire University of California, Irvine. And that really pulls from our power, right? If we don't have Latino women up top. And so I hope that answers your question. And for the question regarding a recommendation for grad school, I always tell my students, you got to keep your eye on the prize. People will say you don't belong. People will say, oh, it's too hard. Or more importantly, why? And I will say, because it's going to be the world difference for you of being able to have a career versus a job. You're going to be able to make more impact, create more social change, be aware. You know, I always talk about you can only study what you know is out there. So if you don't know that our communities have some type of issue, then you won't be driven to create change for that issue. So by education, you'll be educated to know where we need that.
Hi, my name's Chris. The first question, I can have two, but the first one, does anyone have any extra cookies? I'm trying to stay up. So, and I have a discussion I'm going to next, so if you guys want to give some, there you go. But anyways.
If you come to my office to visit during office hours, I promise you to have cookies.
When your office hours?
Tuesdays, 1 to 4.
All right. And the second one is, how long have you been at UCI, and what's your favorite, you know, part of the job?
Great, thank you. So I've been at UC Irvine since 1998. And my favorite part of the job, I hope you've noticed, is working with my students. That is my most favorite. I could teach, I could come in a classroom, I can engage, all that's great, and I love being able to shape the minds of people. But there's something about being in my office on a Tuesday afternoon, and sometimes last night I went to 8 p.m. I started seeing students, and I did not stop from 1 to 8, back to back to back to back. But I heard stories. I heard stories about ancestors. I heard stories about spirits. I heard stories about resilience. I heard stories about so many things. And when I came home, I shared that with my partner. I was like, what? You know, how do you get to hear all these stories? Where do you? And it's that connection, that trust, that notion of desire to help that I hope is transparent. And so that is my favorite part of my career. Not just a job.
Any other questions? Were you able to keep in touch with your father after your parents split?
Very much so. So I had a my father has passed away, he rests in peace, in 2005. It was a really big loss for me, my only child. I was really a daddy's little girl. And he passed away from PSP. PSP is a neurological disease. And when my dad and my mom were young, and they ended up splitting, ironically, this is part of that story when I said I was exposed to Santeria. It was his wife that exposed me to Santeria, because she would come to my home and throw things. And we would wake up and there was like dead chickens outside our right. And so I thought, well, I gotta be educated about this, and so I never did anything for them, but I learned to cleanse my own home. And my mom was like, start praying, do the rosary. And I'm like, yeah, that's good, but we also need to do the things, because this needs to be cleansed. And so Bobby, my father, would come and visit. And he had a very very active role in my life. Every day when I went to grad school, we would talk. Twice and 3 times a day. Okay? And my mom, she'd always say, if anybody didn't know your dad, they'd think like you guys were having some romance or something. Because I was so close to him. And he understood, and I'm very, very close to my mom as well. His thing was, I want you to be as close as you are to me as you are to your mother. I want your mother and you to have a great relationship. We have one, thank God. Although it got only better once he passed away, because obviously all the time I was spending with him, I'm like, okay, now where do I share this? So my dad has and was and is an instrumental part of me. So you asked the question, did you still talk to your dad? I saw him every weekend. He ended up, think about the type of investment my father had as a family. When he cheated on my mom, that's how they broke up. My mom says, well, you're absolutely not going to be able to see her. And I'm not going to want you to be spending time with the baby seeing this lady, because this lady was a friend of ours, and that's going to give her a different value. Like, it's okay to do this thing. So my dad said, no. So he ended up somehow getting a very small apartment so that I can see him every weekend. And my father kept that apartment, and I think about this every day. I think, how do you do? I mean, he didn't even have a whole lot of income, but he had the desire to see me, and so he had this like for 10 years. And I would go and visit, and one day I grew up. I was in high school. I grew up, and I got the courage, and I said, Mom, can I borrow your car? And she's like, where are you going? Oh, I'm just gonna see my dad. She didn't know where I was going. So I got in the car, got all nervous, drove, and I drove to his house, his real house, which is also a rented apartment. And I knocked on the door. And the lady opened. And her eyes was this big. What are you doing here? And I said, I come to see my dad. And how are you? I respectfully embraced her. She cried. And we gathered. So my dad and I had a great relationship. After he, let me kind of get myself here. So after I grew up and went off to grad school, he stayed very close to me. He'd call me, he'd tell me that this is why I was getting my degree, that I had to see him work so hard so that I can understand that this is why an education is important. So watching my dad was a bodeguero. And what does that mean? He had a little shop in, selling meat and selling groceries at the corner shop. Like, no, not big, just like a 7-Eleven. And that's what he did. At the end of the story, he ends up being bankrupt and everything like that, but that's what he did. And so we were very close, and at the end, when he passes away, at the end, right, he was ill, I ended up going to see him, all the time, daily. And today, and this is why I said this, we still talk. So do you talk to your dad? I do.
Did she want to ask her question back there? Okay, we have one over here.
Well, I just wanted to thank you for the great talk that you just gave out. My question is, what is your secret to staying so positive and so energized? And if you have like any advice for us as students that we can maybe do so we can get our minds out of school sometimes?
So I do believe in positivism. They'll say, like, is this half empty, half full? Full of air, full of water. Right? And so I do believe in positivism. I've read almost every positivistic book that's out there, and I think that I build for my family. I think about how my parents had nothing, and how there's so many things that how much of it progress we've made. So every day, and every day also I'm mindful also because I see all the challenges that people have gone through. Like my dad, one day he wakes up and he couldn't talk. He couldn't walk. So every day I do things so I can walk and I can talk. That's a gift in itself, but we don't really see those things, right? So it's about perspective. It's about what we call in shamanism mind shifting. You got to shift your mind. And you have to be able to see things differently. So when things are really bad, and I'm like, oh wow, there's a list of 100 things to do here. I think, okay, I'm going to be able to do this. There's a way. And so I envision I'm able to say, well, this is the way that I'm going to be able to do this. I don't complain. I don't waste time complaining. I do not complain. You know, the more you spend time, oh, but that time I could have spent writing something, so let's not. So it's about, and then the other piece is I create spaces to be able to have that balance. So I walk, I hike, I make sure my eating is healthy. I don't have a whole lot of carbohydrates where all of a sudden I'm feeling very heavy and not very clear. I have a lot of water. So every time you see me, this is like one of my staples. You'll see my smart water is. So I'm always advertising for and it's not that, it's just that water's important. And so that's how I keep positive. I keep positive by trying to take care of my body. I make sure that I'm connected to my family and that I'm connected to community. You know, I don't think that I would be as happy if I didn't feel that I was making a personal, you know, contact or a personal exchange that was going to be worthwhile and valuable. So that's part of it for me.
Okay, this will be the last question.
What do you recommend to students who are pursuing degrees or careers that are not in line with their parents' wishes?
Wonderful question, and I think it's a reality for many people. And so, I mean, first and foremost, I think that I always tell my students, go with your passion. Work towards your passion. Pursue your passion. There's no way that you're going to be the best of the best without loving what you're doing. That's the first thing. You know, and so I'm thinking about students, constantly thinking about higher education. I literally, you know, and I think about constructs and everything just kind of comes naturally. There's something about synchronicity, right? So part of it is, I think, and I would think that you're going to be pursuing something that you love, right? Because you're saying, how do I work with a parent who doesn't understand the fact that I'm pursuing a degree that they don't want me to pursue? Is that correct? And so to be able to do that, I think part of it is honoring yourself and honoring them. The way you honor them is helping them understand what your strengths are. Helping them understand that this is how you're going to be able to do well in this degree, even though this was not something maybe they thought would be the degree. So if you think about low-income families, there's 2 or 3 degrees that they want. Law, medicine, and engineering. Those are your 3. So if you come to me and say, I want to be an archaeologist, I'm like, what? An archaeologist? What are you going to do with that? Right? And so I believe it is your job, not theirs, it's yours, to teach them. To teach them gently. You can't be teaching people, trying to, you know, jam things into their thought process, right? You have to slowly bring things home. Slowly show them projects. Slowly say, this is what it will be like. Slowly share benefits to the degree. And they eventually will get used to it. Time and time. Bringing them, telling them stories, making it applicable. For them, they don't, I think that the key piece here is that they want you to succeed. They want you to have a good life. And their worry is that degree is not going to get you there. So you have to find that connection for your parents, and for yourself most importantly, and then your parents, to be able to bring that together and bridge the generational gap that's happening. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Dr. Castellanos.